What's going on?
Glenn was perplexed as he witnessed the beam of light emitted from Rebellipies. Because the guiding light was directed towards all 4 caves. After watching the beam for a while, Glenn clapped his hands and said, "I see."
Excuse me, may I borrow that?
Glenn extended his hand and requested Chris's dagger. Chris nodded and handed the dagger, which emitted light, to Glenn. Having received it, Glenn crouched down facing the cave. Then, with a big swing, he plunged the dagger into the crystal ground. The dagger pierced through easily to the hilt, as if it were a knife sticking into butter.
From here, let's split into 4 groups and proceed into the cave.
Glenn said as he stood up.
First, I will go to the cave on the left. Is it all right for you to move on to the one next to it, Chris?
Glenn said, pointing to the second cave from the left.
And Boralk, I would like you to take the one next to that.
Glenn instructed Boralk without waiting for Chris to respond.
And, Dalmia, you will go to the cave at the far right.
Glenn instructed Dalmia as well and looked around at everyone to confirm. Not understanding Glenn's intentions, Boralk asked a question.
Why do we need to proceed separately? Doesn't this mean that Chosen One can reach his destination no matter which path he take?
Saying this, Boralk pointed at the 4 beams of light. Glenn quietly shook his head.
No, if so, the Rebellipies would only show one path. The Rebellipies activated by the Chosen One shouldn't lead in a way that confuses. And judging by the strength of the light earlier, it's clear that Chris is more than capable as a wielder. Therefore, it can be inferred that there is significance in the 4 paths being shown.
Raising his index finger, Glenn explained.
Perhaps this is something like a code. I think there is a rule to how we should proceed. Anyway, let's split into 4 groups and move forward from here.
After that, Glenn assigned 1 soldier to each group. The soldier moving alongside Chris was a typical underwater dweller with blue skin, just like Boralk. He was short in stature but had a sturdy build.
Then let's go. First, please proceed following the guiding light.
Glenn instructed as everyone stood in front of the entrance.
If there are any changes in the guidance along the way, please let me know.
Glenn said, pointing to his head as if to indicate that they could communicate mentally even inside the cave.
Soon, we will arrive at Oceanus.
Martis reported to everyone after finishing his operations in the control room. According to Chris, he was heading to Limeraria under the guidance of Almayan. Speaking of Almayan, she is the daughter of Gion, the king of Atlias. Heading from the underwater cave of Reguia to Limeraria likely means going to Oceanus, the nearest city from that exit. Oceanus is the center of Limeraria, where the palace of the royal family is located. It would be quite difficult for Princess Atlias to infiltrate Oceanus, while hiding her identity from her father, Gion, and the king of Limeraria, Dalen. This means there must be someone behind the scenes helping. And Martis was convinced that this person was Glenn, the son of Dalen and the prince of Limeraria. Glenn is well known in the underwater world. For better or worse, he has a revolutionary spirit, possesses charisma and influence, and has garnered significant support from the citizens. Considering someone who has valuable information about Aqua's whereabouts and can use the princess to guide Chris, it could only be Glenn. If it's Glenn, he should be more trustworthy than Gion or Dalen. However, we must not let our guard down. Just as Chris had said, Martis found it hard to believe that Rowan had guided the pirate ship in an attempt to steal Aqua away. However, if Aqua is indeed located in Limeraria, then Rowan's deduction that it was narrowed down to 5 locations in Atlias is certainly strange. That's because if it were Rowan, he should have been able to obtain information on par with Glenn. If that's the case, it's not unthinkable that a plan was devised to split into teams. Send Chris to the quiet port town of Cannon, and have him attacked by pirates. However, Martis couldn't understand the reason behind trying to take Aqua. Rowan is unlikely to be involved with the dark forces. Perhaps he was being instructed by someone, or there was some reason that forced him to act that way. And if Aqua is not in Limeraria, and as Rowan said, is in Atlias, then Chris may be being used by Glenn and Almayan. In the worst case, Chris himself may be in danger. In any case, we need to find Chris quickly and regroup. There's no doubt that Chris is in Oceanus, right? Clare, sitting on the Kutela, asked Martis. Most likely, Martis nodded.
It's almost certain that they headed towards Oceanus. In any case, we need to report this with the King of Limeraria. The King of Limeraria is a reasonable person. If he knows anything, he will surely share it with us.
Upon arriving at the gate, Akahi, in front of the Oceanus Palace, they underwent a strict check before the gate was opened. And then, the roof of Adamascur docked with the entrance. Inside the crystal cave, the walls glowed brightly as if illuminated by indirect lighting. There was enough brightness to move around, so torches were unnecessary. The torch held by the soldier accompanying Chris had been extinguished, turning into just a metal rod. As Chris gazed at the metal rod, a soldier asked, "Do you need a light?" "No, I'm fine," Chris replied, shaking his head and pointing at the rod. The soldier held the rod and said,
"Does the flame ignite at the tip?"
"Ah, this?" the soldier said, raising the stick in front of his chest, and the tip of the stick ignited with flame.
"This is just a lumen,"
said the soldier, showing off the tip that was lit.
"So, as you can see, it's not hot at all."
The soldier said with a friendly smile.
"My name is Eugilus, nice to meet you."
The soldier introduced himself with a bow after extinguishing the light from the stick he was holding. Just as Chris was greeting again, a message came in from Boralk.
The guiding light has gone out on our side.
"It's the same here."
A message also came in from Dalmia following Boralk. In response, instructions came in from Glenn.
Well then, both of you please wait there. How about you, Chris?
It seems still okay on our end.
The red beam indicated by Rebellipes continued further ahead.
Then, Chris, please proceed as guided by the light.
Understood.
A short time later, this time Glenn reported that his guiding light had been cut off. Then, the voice of Boralk was heard.
This time, the guiding light has been shown here.
I see. Then please follow the light again, Boralk.
As Chris and Eugilus continued walking while listening to this exchange, the guiding light was interrupted just after they turned right at the corner. When Chris reported this to Glenn, he was instructed to wait at the spot. Following that, a report came in that a light beam had been shown from Dalmia.
"That's strange, isn't it?"
Eugilus tilted his head as he looked back. Chris asked, "What's wrong?" and Eugilus pointed to the way behind him with the metal rod in his hand.
"Isn't the path reversed?"
Indeed, Eugilus was right. Just now, they should have turned right at the corner. That means, from the point where they are, it would be strange if that corner didn't bend to the left. However, the passage bends to the opposite side. Moreover, the guiding beam that had led them this far had disappeared before they knew it. When Chris and he exchanged glances, Eugilus shrugged his shoulders. After waiting at that spot for a while, a red beam was once again indicated in the passageway where they were heading. However, the beam did not indicate further down the way, but rather pointed back along the path they had originally come from. Following Glenn's instructions, Chris and Eugilus proceeded along the way indicated by the beam, retracing their steps through the cave. In this way, the group advanced and waited, then returned and waited, repeating this process several times. And just as the rays of light indicating each path were reported to have disappeared at the same time, the ground shook and space-time warped limply. Chris felt a dizzying sensation and braced himself to avoid collapsing. Suddenly, a new space appeared right in front of them.